So here are the top 25 college basketball rankings for January 7, 2025, and a short story on imposter syndrome and how I dealt with it last night. Feel free to pause the video if you want to take a look at the rankings. One of the things that I like about the algorithm, the poll that I'm trying to generate and the algorithm I'm tinkering with is that it gives you teams like the UC San Diego Tritons, who are ranked number 21. The poll is starting to reflect a lot of what is happening in college basketball in terms of like the big names and power conferences teams being represented more. But I still like the fact that every now and again you have a team like UC San Diego filtering in. Now, UC San Diego is having a really good season. There are mid-major polls out there. So if you're a basketball head, a basketball nut, and you're interested in like branching out and learning more about just the top 25, you can go online and find mid-major polls, and in those polls, UC San Diego has climbed up to number 7. So yesterday when I was generating the poll and I was entering the data and running the code, a team snuck into the rankings that had no business being there. Now, how I noticed it was because their net rating was negative, and so I used the median, as the net rating to then tabulate the score that gives us the rankings, and they had a negative net rating. Now, because it's the median, then that means that they have net rating scores that are positive, and then you also have net rating scores that are negative because it's sitting in between those. And so that was how I was like, this is wrong. This team should not be there. And then when I went through the data, it's like they're barely above 500, and they've had a really rough patch the last couple of games that have led to losses. And so I was like, okay, there's something wrong with the algorithm. And that is what kicked my imposter syndrome into hyperdrive. Now, I built the algorithm with the help of ChatGPT. I did go to school. I have experience with coding. I have experience with mathematics. But, ChatGPT kind of helps out with a lot of these things and makes it so that you can do multiple things and just be faster. But one of the problems when you do coding on ChatGPT is that if you're gonna just do like a basic prompt, right, that then is gonna generate a calendar or whatever, ChatGPT is great. But if you're constantly working with it within the chat, the memory for it just sucks. Eventually, like, it starts to freeze and it starts to like give you black screens, and it feels at times like you're trying to load a web page in the 1990s when the internet was first created. And so that also kind of made my imposter syndrome, like flare up, because it's like, oh, I hope that this does not start to happen, because now I'm going to have to start feeding ChatGPT code that we worked on, and I have to remind ChatGPT of the things that we were trying to accomplish. And then as you start to pump it with more and more, it starts to behave in that particular way. So I was working on it for hours, and eventually around like midnight or 1 a.m., I finally figured out what the issue was. And then I ran it, and then it generated this, and this looks more like what a poll should look like. But there's still that doubt that's in the back of the head, back in the mind. And that creates, I guess, both a psychological and physiological response where you're just like, dude, am I good enough to do this? Am I smart enough to do this? So this morning, I wanted to revisit the steps of what I did last night, and I wanted to essentially provide the code for the algorithm again, and I just had a discussion with ChatGPT. So let me share what I asked it. So I said, can you further explain how steps 1, 2, and 3 work to aggregate team metrics in step 5 and calculate the composite score, especially which parts of the composite score do steps 1, 2, and 3 make up? My assumption is that steps 5 is the sum of all the parts, or the whole of all the parts, and that parts that came before it are individual pieces that will eventually make up the whole. Again, that's my doubt. I know that that's what it's supposed to do, but I just want to clarify that that's what we're actually doing. And I also want to make sure that the memory is being kept up so that it doesn't get lost. But again, I'm asking questions that I know the answers to. And then I say, what do steps one, two, and three have in common? And are they different from the whole or from the calculating the composite score? So essentially, how are they similar? How are they different? And then at one point, after I wrote that, I then typed in like, does this question make sense? Am I like smart enough and on track with what I'm trying to do? Ultimately I deleted the last part, but it was just that moment of like I need some reassurance that I'm onto something, that what I'm trying to accomplish is being accomplished, and I'm doing this right, and I'm capable enough. And so yeah, I there are times where you use ChatGPT as both a way to vent, and both you try to get emotional support when the imposter syndrome kicks in. And so my message is if you're young and you're gun ho and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do things, and you have that mentality, you know, I'm jealous of you, I'm envious of you. Please hang on to that, even if you are wrong in what you're trying to do, and as long as it's not malicious, like just having that, like, oh yeah, that attitude, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get that done. It's such an advantage, because when you get older, you know, that kind of fades a little bit. It goes away. So if you ever decide to make a career change, you know, do it with no regrets. Just commit to it, believe in it. Um, don't let doubt creep in. Um, and if it does creep in, just know that there are people who are not as gifted as you, who are doing what you want to do, and if they can do it, then you can do it. Um, if you stuck around, thanks for sticking around and for letting me vent. Have a good one.